Once upon a time, there was a wise professor who wanted to teach his students an important life lesson. One day he entered the classroom carrying a large, empty glass jar, a bag of rocks, some pebbles, a container of sand, and a bottle of water. The students watched curiously as the professor placed the jar on the table and began filling it with the large rocks. Once the rocks reached the rim, he asked the class, "Is the jar full?" The students nodded and said, "Yes, it's full." The professor smiled, then picked up the bag of pebbles and poured them into the jar. He shook the jar gently, allowing the smaller stones to settle into the spaces between the larger rocks. Again, he asked, "Is the jar full now?" This time, the students hesitated but eventually replied, "Yes, it's full." The professor chuckled and took the container of sand. He carefully poured it into the jar, letting the fine grains trickle into the tiny crevices. Once more, he asked, "Is the jar full?" The students laughed and replied, "Yes, now it's definitely full." The professor held up the bottle of water. "Are you sure?" he asked with a grin. He uncapped the bottle and poured the water into the jar, filling it completely. The class erupted in laughter and applause, amazed at how much more the jar could hold. Once the laughter subsided, the professor grew serious. "This jar," he began, "represents your life. The rocks are the most important things: your family, health, and passions. Even if everything else were lost, your life would still be meaningful with these intact. The pebbles are the other important things, like your job, house, or education. The sand represents the small stuff, like material possessions and trivial matters. And the water? It's the extra joys that enrich life, like hobbies and relaxation." He paused, letting the words sink in. If you fill the jar with sand or water first, there won't be space for the rocks or pebbles. Likewise, if you spend all your time and energy on small things, you'll never have room for what truly matters. Prioritize wisely. The students nodded, reflecting on their lives. The lesson resonated deeply, and many of them went home that day with a renewed sense of purpose. The professor smiled as he watched his students leave the room. He knew they had learned one of the most valuable lessons of all: the importance of balancing life's priorities. Moral: focus on what truly matters in life. If you prioritize the most important things, there will always be room for everything else.